I can't even imagine. Like I would have cried every single day if that had to have been my life, right?
I want to understand that because you said it's very typical of the firstborn. Like, are there certain, like, I guess what's the characteristic of a firstborn? Because like I understand like the eldest daughter piece, you know, but I don't. I guess I'm confused by like what's typical to see between the firstborn, secondborn, and is it just when there's multiple kids, or is this the same kind of thing with just one kid? See what I'm saying? Like that's what I guess I have a question.
Yeah, so I mean I'd have to revert back to some literature to figure out like exactly, the differentiation between birth order, but so an only child gets all of it, right? Because they're an only child. So they typically have traits of firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, um, but a typical firstborn is all about themselves. I mean, you can spin it into positive, you could spin it into a negative, label or whatever, but a firstborn is usually all about themselves because they're the firstborn. They are treated like the king and queen of the household. They don't have to necessarily share their toys. They don't have to be considerate of another human being because they have adults that are catering to them. So I truly believe like through like nurture that fosters that the world revolves around me kind of attitude. And typically they grow out of it a little bit as they mature and develop emotional maturity and, get clued into the world around them. Um, and that's why oftentimes it's very difficult for the second child because the firstborn typically is like extremely jealous because now here's this other human being that's inconveniencing mom, helping them tie their shoes, get them something to drink, read them stories, right? And kids, I mean, unless the age difference is 20 years between your two kids, like kids are developmentally right where they're going to be developmentally. So they can't understand, logically, they cannot understand that they need to wait because, little Colleen's diaper needs to be changed.
Yeah.
So you need to wait for your milk. Well, I want it now. They've been, for however long they've been an only child, they've used to getting their needs met pretty much when they express their needs. So they learn to be very self-centered, and can oftentimes be very considerate of others because they don't need to be. And through parenting, through nurturing, through showing them like, oh, you know what, Colleen, she can't get her own snack that's on the table like you can. Mom has to give her a bottle. I have to breastfeed. Like through teaching and explaining, they can learn to be considerate. They can learn to be compassionate of other people. Some firstborns don't ever outgrow that lack of consideration for others because they're just so used to thinking about themselves. Usually it's later on down the line, their peers who usually will say something to them, like a person that they're dating, life partner, stuff like that. And then they'll typically learn to be like, oh, well, or again, through parenting, to be like, that's just not okay that you know, did whatever and you didn't give anybody else in this house. Like, say for instance, a firstborn goes, I don't know, say they're coming home from wherever they're coming home from, right? A friend's house or whatever. And they decide that they want to stop and get themselves an ice cream. Most people would eat the ice cream before they come home because they don't really have enough money probably to buy ice cream for their siblings, right? Someone who hasn't grown out of that lack of consideration will come home eating an ice cream and not think of the impact that it has on everyone else. So, yeah.
No, I love it. And then
Middle child usually always feels left out. the third child is always almost exclusively babied. When you have four, you can sometimes see a mix of first and second, third and fourth. Like they sometimes are almost functioning as if they're the same, traits and stuff. And the more kids you have, the less diluted those birth orders come.
That's fascinating to me. It's very fascinating. And just because, one, I was not always ignorant to the idea of siblings, right? Like, I mean, I was the only child between my mom and my dad, but at the same time, like I had friends, I went to daycare. I did all of these things to where I was like, oh, I remember the first time I went to a friend's house who had a younger sibling. I was 4 or 5. I knew it was coming. I remember being 4 or 5 and her little sister came in, and she, typical big sister, like, oh, I'm with my friends, get out of my room. And I'm like, dude, she can hang out. Like she can play, like I was always, but I remember being that only child, I always wanted people to hang out. Like I always wanted, so it's very, I don't want to say cool, but it's very interesting to me to hear that, the firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, like how it kind of all intermingles. And like, of course, I've only had one child, I haven't popped out 2 or 3. So seeing that like from a different angle, it's kind of cool to see, and at the same time, I can't help but wonder, like, I wonder how many parents realize this, like you get pregnant, you bring in the first one. Right. And then again, you get pregnant again, then you bring in the second year. And I wonder if you even realize that dynamic. You know what I mean? That dynamic of the first and second and what's kind of happening, or even a third if you throw in a third or fourth, however many children you want. That's totally up to you. But like, you know what I mean? Like it's that question just amazes me. It's like I wonder if we even as adults, as parents, as humans, whatever that looks like, do we even know the dynamic that we're bringing into this life that we've just brought into this world? You know what I mean? It's cool. It's cool all the way around. So
yeah. And every child is born into a different family, because they're not the first child, they're the second child. And then the third child is the third child. Like they're assimilating into a very different family than when it was just the parents, when it was just the first child, when it was just the second child. So, I mean, your parenting should remain consistent throughout, like your values, your core values and stuff like that. But you're going to parent each of your children differently because they have different personalities. I was talking about like the differences, we're having a conversation recently, and, my son came home. He was probably, I don't even think he was 2 yet. And he came home from when he switched from staying home exclusively to switched over to going somewhere for daycare a couple of days a week. The first day he went there, he came home and he went, Mom, I'm not wearing diapers anymore. I'm a big boy. And I said, okay. And he never wore diapers again, except for bedtime. So he only had, I would say, less than 5 accidents throughout. I don't even think that many. And he made that decision. And how many people do you hear, especially with like little boys, like, oh my God, I can't potty train. Like, and here, he was like, just, nope, not wearing diapers anymore. That's it, decided.
I think that's like a prime, I love that topic, especially when it comes to kids, because I think it really shows perspective of who their like what personality they have, because it's totally up to them. It's totally up to them when they go. It's not up to us as parents. It's up to us as parents to when we get them acclimated and going, right? But it's totally up to them to make that decision. Like, I love that. And I think you've done this too. Like, I didn't have that problem with Waylon either. Like, with him being the only child, of course, our house was safe, but every door was open. Okay. So if mom or dad went to the bathroom, the door was open because we had to hear, right? Well, when he got mobile, he was following us everywhere, so it was nothing. and the parents on here, the non-parents on here, if you don't have children, you know, good luck or I'm happy for you because you never have to get used to going to the bathroom with an audience. When you are a parent, you know that you have an audience every day. But he got so, like, he was curious, you know. Well, when he finally started walking, that was at 13 months. By 15 months, this kid was on the little potty. You know, I couldn't get one of the big ones to put him, or like one of the toilet seat covers that you can sit on. He was too little for ours. So he would use his little Elmo potty. But and then pull-ups at nighttime because, you know, but they have to make that decision. And I've had multiple parents like, how did you get him to do this so young? And I said, I didn't.
That's what he was interested in doing.
We just acclimated everything that we did. Like I didn't try to force things, you know, except the talking, because again, he was 2 before he was forming complete sentences, but it was our fault. You know, the kid's not going to talk if you do it all for them. They'll just point, you know, so it's funny, or it's really cool to see that. And I think talking, anything that isn't, well, I don't even want to say talking because that's I'm not a doctor, but like that's speech and brain, and it takes a lot of things to click in order for that to happen. But I mean, just the decision, you know, like taking a bottle over a sippy cup, you know, or going to the potty without a diaper, you know, all of it, building my blocks without my mom there or not, you know, like all of these decisions that our children make, you know, it really hones in on their personality. So I don't know where I was going with this, but when we started talking about it, I was like, this is really kind of cool to see, you know, and I think it's really cool for our viewers to kind of see too, like we've been dialing in on yourself, you know, but like, as we've said multiple times, the more in tune you can get with yourself, the more aware you can get with yourself, the more aware you can get of your surroundings and the other people around you, you know, and that's, I mean, to me, that's a real gift.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Don't have to be intrusive with it, but I mean, I think awareness can I don't know how to put it in words. I think awareness can give you a perspective of other people and you in a way that you never even thought before, you know. So it's just really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when you're raising little humans that you created, if you can learn, you know, if you have the luxury and it's your choice to be a stay-at-home parent, you have the luxury of time to truly get to know your child. And I'm very grateful that for what I do for work, I was able to do that. I was able to spend 99% of my time with them when they were little. And, you know, before my daughter, both my kids walked early, they talked early, like they just did. But before my daughter really had words, she had this big old picture book. And I had a back injury for the first year of her life, and I was very limited on what I could do. I couldn't lift her. I couldn't lift up things. I couldn't even pick up like a gallon of milk. So I was very limited. Spent a lot of time, not that it helped with the pain, but spent a lot of time laying down, sitting down, you know, just trying. And so we read a lot of books, you know, we didn't do much else. I didn't do much else because I just couldn't, you know, take her places and stuff like that. But not until after I had surgery. But that picture book is how she learned how to communicate. If she wanted something, she'd guide me to the kitchen, and I'd be like, I don't know what you want. She, on her own, would go back into where we kept the books. She would get that picture book and sit down and flip through the pages until she found what she wanted. And then she'd point to it. And then I would give it a name, like, oh, you want grapes, you want carrots, you want, you know, and we didn't do juice. I was not a juice mom, so juice was never a thing. She was allowed water, water and milk or a formula, you know, until she was a year old. And she would point to what she wanted and I would go get it for her. And so through me having that, first of all, knowledge of child development and experience, because I had a lot of experience before I became a parent. So in understanding early childhood and alternative ways to help kids with communication, reduces tantrums and all of that stuff. So through all of that, I was able to foster and encourage and nurture how she was developing without forcing her into society's way of developing. And unfortunately, in my personal opinion, that's the downfall to so many kids that have to go to daycare. I understand parents need to work and families need to make decisions that are right for them. Absolutely. But one of the downfalls is they don't get that intimate nurturing. They don't get that one person unless you have a nanny, which I was a nanny for 10 years. Those kids had me. They had one person who took the time to get to know them and help them build their strengths. And I hope that I did a good job. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, because of me, I don't see any of the kids that I used to be a nanny for. One of my life's biggest regrets. But, I certainly hope that what I did was good, and it had a good impact on them. I hope I obviously didn't have any negative impact on them. But unfortunately, daycare takes away that from children, and it forces them to fit in an adult world. They have structured snack time, they have structured nap time, they have, like, kids are not meant, yes, on a schedule, sure.
Yes.
Same bedtime every night. You know what I mean? Like, but they shouldn't be like so regimented, like us adults regiment ourselves.
I agree. And I'll even put myself out there. I mean, Waylon went to daycare. He went to daycare from 3 months old. Well, until the world shut down for COVID, right? So they shut down 2 days after or 3 days after his first birthday. Okay. And then, so he was home. I was lucky enough to hire a nanny. And I loved her, hands down. I still talk to her. We actually have her wedding coming up this summer, in 2026. I can't wait. I love her. I actually wanted her. I could not pay her enough to get her to quit school and just be a full-time nanny. I could not do that. But, if I could have, I would have. I absolutely loved her. But with the job that I had then, like, I had no other choice. They would not let me work from home with him.
Yeah.
So I had to find outside care. But we brought him home at 2.5, actually, after, well, Colleen, you knew that there were some sitter issues. So I pulled him, and I'm going to be very honest with you. Yes. Did it take me through a fucking loop? Absolutely. Because mom was used to, okay, this is the routine. This is my time to work. This is mom's time to do mom stuff. And then on the way to go pick him up, I could decompress. Well, when you bring your kid home, it's you and him, or you and her, whatever, all the time. Right. And did it throw me for a loop? Yes. But can I honestly say, I think it was one of the best decisions? Yeah. Because it has given me so much insight, not only for me as a person, okay, but as a mom. And it let me kind of view that inner child of me again, which allowed me to heal a lot of things.
Yep.
But it let me kind of reconnect and get to his level. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And being able to do that, not only, like you said, was I able to nurture him, get to know him as a person. Like, my son he's not a sports fanatic. He's not one to go join a sports team, but you hand him Legos, you hand him a circuit board, you hand him a microphone or guitar or drum sets, like the kid's on it, like being able to navigate those different things with him, but also seeing the shit that makes him tick, Seeing those different things because he's been home with me, because I have had that time with him, it gives me a better insight to get him prepared for school, right? For those of you that have children that are going to school, or if you decide to homeschool, I mean, homeschooling is totally your choice. Like I'm pro either, you know, you got to do what you have to do as a parent, you know, but like making those connections, it helps me better him for the school. It helps me better him to get him ready to not just like educational wise, because there's so much more that happens up here other than learning, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
like, and it's that deeper stuff. Like, Colleen, this is totally year round because you know all about the early development and stuff like that. But like, when I don't know what to call it, like just the school topics, like the reading, the math, all that shit, like that's one thing. But being able to make those connections with my son, like I can help support him in the emotional, the mental, the even the physical, you know, the social aspects of it. I can pick up on the cues that he has because I've had that time to get to know him. When I know that he's anxious, you know, Colleen, I've told you this, but for those of you that don't know, my son won't stand in the line before school. We have to wait 2 to 3 minutes after they dismiss that line because it gives him too much anxiety. He can't handle it. It's too many people. There's no fault in that. But me not being able to take that time and realize that, I learned that from the multiple times I would go to the grocery store. Too many people around me, freak out, cover his ears. It's just not good for him, you know? Not being able to know that about your kid. Like, I just remember, like, I take myself back to myself. Like, my parents open up the car door, okay, love you, bye, get out. And you go run and stand up there, you know? I can
Yep.
make that active decision to say, okay, wait a second, we're pull up here because it's better for his health, you know? What's 3 minutes more out of my day? You know, like just those little connections that you can make doing that, if you can, you know, and like Colleen said, like as a parent, you have to do what you have to do. You know, there's no harm, no foul there. You got to do what you have to do. But if you get the chance to have that one-to-one time, you know, take it. And even if you are dropping them off at daycare or, you know, you do have a nanny or somebody helping you, you can always create that extra additional one-to-one time, you know, with your child. Make a unique bedtime routine for just you guys. Make a unique dinner routine for just you guys. Bath time. It doesn't, you pick, right?
Yep.
But just get to know that about your kid. Sorry, Colleen, your turn. Like I said, you're better equipped for this stuff, but like just being able to see that, like in hearing you say that, I was like, oh yeah, like I can definitely see these different cues that I probably would have missed on, you know, because I was a parent. Like, well, why can't I just let you out here? You know?
Yeah. Well, and you know, some parents, you know, some people argue with, oh well, you know, accommodating him is just creating this, blah 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 blah. You know, there also has to be, like, when my kids got to be a certain age, we would go out to eat. For many, many years, we never went to a restaurant because why would I do that? In my opinion, why would I do that to a little person? They can't tolerate, you know, sitting for however long, like in a high chair. Like they don't want to do that, right? They're 2 years old, they have a 20-second attention span. So I very rarely went out to non-kid friendly places, you know. Yeah, we have a place called Chuck E. Cheese. You know, we would go to Chuck E. Cheese where, you know, they could run and play, come back, take a bite of pizza, and then run and play again, right? Can't do that if you go to like a traditional adult kind of restaurant. So yes, you have to understand and foster independence as your kids can tolerate independence. He's not always going to need you
Right.
to take that extra time. Eventually he's going to be fine. But if you can help him and let him know that it's safe and you're his safe person right now, and you're going to help him safely transition into the world, that's going to help him build confidence. So why wouldn't we do that? I mean, if he's like 10,
Yep.
and he's still doing that, that's an anxiety issue, right? That's a bigger issue, right? But if you can if you can be like, all right, well, we're going to try this today. You know what I mean? Like as he gets a little bit older and as he gets used to, maybe someday he'll take the bus to school and he won't have a choice but to pile in like, a herd of cows, like with all the other kids. Right. So, you have to know your kids, and being a stay-at-home parent or homeschooling isn't right for everyone. It is, being a stay-at-home parent is a lot harder than meeting the time constraints of picking them up from daycare, rushing to get dinner, rushing to get baths, getting them into bed so you can start tomorrow all over again, right? That is easier for some people because they're not, when you're giving to a child all day long, it's a lot because you're doing, 20 jobs every single day. So regardless of what family dynamic is, regardless of what family choice, family necessity is, there's pros and cons to it all. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's horrible that parents have to work 40 hours and then have to travel and pick their 8-week-old up from daycare, right? I think that's horrible. I think in this country, we should do like what a lot of other countries do. We should get leave for a year. Because I think the first year of life is so significant for kids. And I can't even imagine. Like I would have cried every single day if that had to have been my life, right? I don't judge people if that is, you know what I mean? Like I understand, you can't, not everyone can afford to drop down to just one income or 1.5 incomes. You know what I mean? Like it just, but understanding your child and meeting them where they're at developmentally and encouraging them to do it. Like you had mentioned, when kids are old enough to, kind of get a drink on their own. Yeah, you might not let them pick up the whole big, huge gallon, but you know what? You can get a smaller container that you can pour their preferred drink in. You can put it on a lower shelf in the refrigerator so they can go in there with their little cup and they can safely, not safely, but without spilling it all, they can get themselves a drink, right? That's, you're building their confidence and you're building their independence. And that's what is our job as parents, is to build and foster that independence in our kids so they can be functioning adults.
Yep.
And the amount, when we are off camera today, I'll remind me to share a story with you. So.
You can't go. That's what the amount was. You were going to go into a story. Okay. I'll have to remind you. I'm going to make note of that because I have a feeling that I'm going to want to hear this.
You are.
No, I completely agree, Colleen. Like, I honestly, like, I have a lot of people that ask me, like, are you sure you made the right decision by, leaving the corporate world and not going back to it? Because that question has constantly come up. Well, do I pack this up and go back to the corporate world? But I mean, money has actually never been a reason why I haven't went back. Yeah, for those of you watching, we all need money. That's how the system works. But at the same time, my family needs the structure that we have here more. So for us, like, it makes sense to keep sacrificing certain things, especially with where our family structure is and how it goes. It just makes sense. But from what just like Colleen said, like, you have to sit down and make that decision,
Yeah.
But please understand, like, that money factor can't be that first decision maker on this. Obviously you have to keep yourself going and everything, but like being there and whether it's homeschool, whether it's like being there for the first year, 2 years of your child's life, whatever that looks like for you and your family. I mean, know that it does make a huge difference, you know,
Yeah.
if you can. I mean, like I said, what Colleen, and I love how you said that, it's 20 jobs, if not more, you know.
Yeah.
Because it absolutely is. You know, 1 minute you're a personal chef trying to figure out how to make blueberry pancakes. You know, the next you're a detective because God forbid the fucking purple Lego done disappeared to midair. You know, and then you're a psychiatrist. You're a doctor. You wear all of these hats. You're a fucking engineer. You know, you know, like it's legit. I'll be with you in just a second. As you can see, you know, like you play all of these things, but at the end of the day, like you have to understand you and your child can both benefit from that.
Yeah.
You and them. It's not just them. Because you can learn a lot more about yourself when you understand and have that awareness of what hat you're playing, to a point where you can kind of get back into your inner child, back to your inner self, and really find the pieces that actually do make you or do make you like excited. And that, I have a prime example for that too. Like for the longest time, I pushed the personal growth stuff off. Colleen, you know this, and a few of you watching this probably do too. Like I always felt like this is not my calling. Like I loved it. Like there were things that I really liked about it. The favorite kind of genre book that I've always read has been a self-help book. You know, it's always just been part of me, but it's been one of the biggest, scariest things that I've ever tried to like done, just because it's like, this is a belief in myself that I have to like really take the leap for. But being able to do this inner work for myself, but then also seeing how it can benefit my son and my husband, like it kind of like tips it up a notch, if that makes sense. I don't know if those are the right words, but like it kind of sparks something.
Yeah.
You know, and hence why you and I are here, hence the unfiltered you, hence, you know, Colleen's somatic piece. You know, I'm not saying Colleen started the somatic piece because of me. That's not why. But I'm just saying, like, we are here. This is raw energy folding out and right here, you know? So it's just kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What time do you have to go?
On time today.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure you had time for lunch too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. Is there anything else you want to say on this episode? Any other topics we want to talk about before or do you want to share your story? I can stop recording.
Yeah, no, I think we covered, you know, I think we covered a good amount of parents self-care, child self-care, you know, touched upon development. So no, I think that's good.
I think so too. Okay, let me stop recording then, because that'll be an easy edit. Heck yeah.